Welcome to Mind Boost Moments, a podcast for those who want to hear from like-minded people and how they're making a dent in the world. So join me on my continued journey of learning and discovery. My guest on this episode is Julie Holmes, who's a speaker, inventor and self-proclaimed tech nerd. I had a fabulous conversation with Julie about embracing change, always trying to understand how to fix things and looking for solutions, and also leveraging technologies like AI. We had an interesting conversation about being curious children and how that's influenced our outlook and what that means to the next generation. This is Mind Boost Moments.
Yeah, I'm an avid learner. So I love technology but I love solving problems. So it almost doesn't even matter what those problems are. I can spend every day and be like, oh, that's terrible. I'm going to fix that. I'll figure out a way to fix that. And I can absolutely get lost in technology and be like, oh, there's so many cool things that you can do with technology now that can make things easier, faster, smarter, can save time, can do all these things. And I could spend all day doing that.
Where does that come from then? Like that natural curiosity to, to take things apart maybe and to sort of solve something?
Do you know what? I have a theory and I don't have any evidence to support it, which won't stop me from sharing it. But my theory is that I grew up on a farm. Okay. So my grandparents had a beautiful farm, they had about 75 acres in Iowa, in southern Iowa. And it's just really idyllic. Rolling hills, a pond, but it was also an age of time. You'll remember this, right? Where it was like that of the house. And if I see you again, I will give you something to do. Yeah. And so, we used to just spend our summers all day, every day, just filling time. Doing stuff. And having to come up with ways to fill time. Yeah. And, there's actually a story I tell on stage sometimes, but I spent, an entire week building a trap to catch a wild cat. Wow. We only had feral cats on the farm. So it was a farm. It was a working farm. Yeah. And we only had feral cats. We had no pet cats. You couldn't pet any of them. And I refused to accept that because my grandparents were like, we're not having any pets. This is a working farm. We don't have pets. What are you talking? No, that's not happening. So I was like, well, that's fine. I can solve that problem. All I need to do is to catch a cat, convince it that I'm super amazing. Yeah. And I think I was probably 6 or 7 at the time, maybe. And of course, this was the era, right? Where it was like, sure, go ahead and catch a wild animal, Julie, knock yourself out. Like they were completely nonplussed by that idea. They were like, that sounds great. What do you need to make that? And I was out there like assembling things and like building stuff. And I caught a cat and it went very badly, but it was great. But that is exactly, you exercise that muscle every single day. And it was always, because they had grown up without, and they had built everything. They built their house, they built their farm, all of that from hand, and they'd done it all while selling eggs. And, you just see this world, and same thing with my parents who, my parents were, teenage pregnancy, that scenario. Neither of my parents had graduated from high school. It's just a roll your sleeves up and there's no excuses. Yeah. Right. Excuses just stop you from moving forward. So, hey, you really want that? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to make that happen?
Do you think something's changed then over the last, the sort of the next generation? Because I've seen an awful lot of people that are just like, I'm doing a job, I'm doing a task, and I just get on with that task, and I want to get home and, sit and watch the telly sort of stuff or do something else. What's changed, do you think?
Well, there's actually, it isn't just in this case, it's not just an opinion. There's actually all kinds of research And because I speak on innovation and technology, it's one of those things that I find really fascinating, that some of the skills that we need have been on the decline for the last 15 to 20 years. And skills like problem solving, critical thinking, communication, creativity, there's all kinds of studies that a lot of that is on the decline. And of course, it's fine. Other skills are on the incline as well. So it isn't just like, oh, is me, the world is, going to this dark and dangerous place. It's not. We do need to ramp those skills back up. We always need them. But a huge portion of why that happens, of course, is instant gratification. So it is so easy. I mean, I've watched my own kids. I have 2 daughters who are in their 20s, and I've watched my own kids. They never had to fill time, right? It was really easy for them to pick up an iPad or to pick up their phone or to text a friend. They never had to really kind of fill that time. And of course, it makes a difference too. We always want more for our kids than we had ourselves, which meant, I don't think that we spoiled our kids, but we certainly provided for them. Our children never wanted for anything, and that's always a bit risky. You as a parent, I think that's really hard to balance never wanting, one of your kids to never want for anything, but at the same time, building a child who wants things for themselves and is willing to work toward them. And so, certainly my kids, myself, like it's a big question, isn't it? Like, what's the line?
I'm just reflecting on my own experiences as well, which sound very similar actually, because, I recall as a young kid just being out, in the holidays and just making stuff. I mean, I was a proper oik, in the word in the UK is an oik.
I don't even know what that is. Is that legal, Caleb? Is that legal? Is that a legal thing?
I was horrible. I was a horrible little kid but when I reflect on it, I was, I was an oik because I was curious. I was making stuff. I was, getting to solve stuff, which is exactly the same really. And then what I'm also thinking is something's changed in our thought process as parents as well, to go, we want to give more to our kids so they don't have to do that. But actually what we're both saying is those experiences, young kid exploring and just having nothing and making something out of it, were the most powerful and influential in our lives. And so have we done something as parents, or have our children just accepted what's going on in the world as well?
Well, it's a mix, isn't it? Right. I mean, it's a combination. It's a perfect storm. And it's going to just get a bit more complex as well, right? Because now we've got AI and we've got lots of new technology. The answers are very easy. I mean, just think of the last time that you had to navigate somewhere without a GPS. Like if somebody handed you an A to Z right now, I mean, if you gave that to your kids and said, we need to get here.
I know.
My brother and I, when we were kids, there's a thing in America, and if anybody's ever curious, you should go and check this out because it's just a funny piece of history. But in America, there's the AAA, which is like the AA here in the UK. But the AAA is a car club. But it used to be that when you were a member of the AAA and you went on holiday, and it was almost always a driving holiday, we could not afford to fly anywhere. So when you went on holiday, you could say, we're going from Iowa to Florida, which is probably a 25-hour drive. And you would go to them and they would make this triptych for you, which was a book.
No way.
And they would assemble all the pages and highlight all the route.
Yes.
And then you would flip each page and there would be things to do. And we used to spend about a month working on that triptych, looking at it, deciding what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do. And now you would just go online and go, I'm going from here to Florida. One, I'm going to fly. I'm not going to drive because that takes too long. But let's assume that we did drive. And I would just say, give me a route. And there would be my GPS and I would be all done.
Yeah. And I actually think it's getting, so that time of thought now is sort of declining, because it's probably half an hour before you're due to leave that you go, oh, just put Google Maps on, or immediately as you get in the car, just put Google Maps on, that'll work out for us. Whereas it was a whole planning. I mean, again, on that, I recall driving to Disneyland Paris for the first time with a map, and it should have only taken us about 3 hours. It took us about 15 hours because we just kept going wrong. And then TomTom came out sort of a couple of years after. It's like, my God, this has changed our world. Why could we not have this a couple of years before? But you're right. It's just as things are evolving, and then it's that speed that you just expect things sooner, quicker, immediately. And as you say, the perfect storm all coming together.
But I don't want it to be doom and gloom, right? No. And I don't consider myself to be one of those people that's like, oh, the good old days. Oh, the good old days. You know what I mean? We're creating new good old days. Yeah. Like, just imagine all the things that we look back on now. It's going to be the same things our kids are looking back on in 30 years, and they're going to be like, can you believe that they lived without AI? Like, wow, that's crazy. My parent, like I remember the days without AI, and their kids are going to be like, what, Mom, Dad, that's nuts. What, how is that possible? How did you survive? We'll be like, I don't know.
Yeah. And do you think we're going to have a measurement of a timeline that says pre-AI and post-AI?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All you have to do is just see like the new technology that's coming out, right? And having like this personal assistant in your pocket. And we already kind of have pre-cell phone and post-cell phone. Yeah. Like our parents couldn't find us. Even if they had to, they couldn't find us. No. And now, my kids are grown, but let's say before they were grown, I'm not tracking them now, but I could have told you, well, even my husband now, I can tell you, what junction he's at on a motorway because I have Find My Phone. Yeah.
And it's inbuilt in cars as well. So, for the right reasons. But so how, I'm just thinking about the impact of that freedom and curiosity offered us, and what's sort of the new version of that then? What does that look like? How do we stimulate these curious minds to really generate and provide solutions, but in a modern way now? What do you think there?
I think we have to just be a lot more intentional about it. Okay. So it used to happen just by existence. So it used to just be the kind of thing that was like, like kids are going to go out and play all day and we don't think about it. Yeah. And so, and you know what, let's be completely fair. It wasn't the case for everyone, right? I can talk about having my summers on the farm, but there were a lot of kids back then as well who didn't have those opportunities. Yeah. And so, it isn't like, oh, this was this perfect world, we were pretty poor. We were relatively poor. Yeah. And it just meant that we had to do things differently. And now I think what's different is that kids today, and it's fascinating to me. I watch, my friends who have young children, and I'm seeing them make just really beautiful, intentional choices. I don't, I wish I could go back and make different intentional choices as a parent. Hindsight's 2020. Yeah. So I think that's really the secret going forward, is that we have to be super intentional about how we spend our time. It's going to require us to be more purposeful in everything that we do, purposeful in how we spend our time, in what we invest in learning, in how we entertain ourselves, what we choose to do. Do we choose to sit and binge watch 25 hours of Game of Thrones, or, do we make ourselves kind of pace it, sort of thing? Do we read more variety of books, or do we just stay in one genre? Like, what are we doing to make ourselves grow and to help our children to grow, and being really conscious of those decisions?
What I've sort of learned is that there's definitely not one size fits all, but there isn't I think what I see has changed over the years is you tend to think, oh, this is my trade, this is my skill, and I'm just going to stay in that lane forever. And actually the enrichment is now there's an opportunity to change and, to flip what you're doing on a regular basis. And, there's so many tools available for you to support that as well.
Yeah.
And when we talk about AI and lots of opportunity in terms of, software to be able to support you on that, there's a shortcut to nearly everything these days to be able to achieve that. And I mean, I was only having a conversation yesterday with someone in a great big in a business to say, well, you might do a day job in a role, say like a chef, but actually your passion piece is videography and stuff like that, because you've taught yourself, you've leveraged all the powerful tools that are available. Now, our next, the evolution almost to that is to recognize all those additional skills and to start elevating that in people, which, is only going to get easier and easier and quicker as we embrace new technology. And so maybe that's how we can sort of rekindle those, the curious moments where you're out just making stuff.
I think that's absolutely true. You and I are probably of a similar age, that when we joined the workforce, it was expected that you find a company and you stay there forever. Like forever. Like you're looking at, I was 22 and looking at pension plans. What kind of pension does this company offer? And now, I think what the average tenure at a role is something like 2.5 years, maybe.
Wow.
But I also think that everything shifts to becoming much more skills based.
Yeah.
So, we're seeing a lot more people, instead of being education based and, like, here's the things I've memorized, it now becomes, here's the things I know how to do right now. And it is absolutely, with AI especially, it is faster and easier to learn new things and to master new skills. And I think it's going to give people the opportunity to be a lot more broad than they were in the past.
Yeah.
So it used to be that, and again, we look at things like university, particularly in the UK, we have a lot of interesting debates at our house about university in the UK versus the US. So my husband has a degree in economics, and I would say that his degree in economics, his bachelor's degree in economics in the UK, is the equivalent of a master's degree in America. All he studied for 3 years, all he studied was economics.
Wow.
Whereas in America, it's 4 years to earn a degree, but half of that time is spent in general education. Okay. So you're required to take classes in arts and science, in physical education, in languages, in public speaking, in, it varies, business, everything. And then 2 years worth of your classes is in your chosen subject matter.
Yeah.
So now the world is going to move too fast. So we can't wait 4 years for somebody to matriculate with a degree of skill of anything, right? That's just everything is going to get much faster, and everything is going to change so quickly that if I was to go to university right now and try to spend 4 years learning something, by the time I finished, it's completely different.
Yeah.
So it's much more bite-sized, which I think is going to suit people. And let's not forget that historically, the world was set up for people of a certain picture.
Yeah.
If you learned a certain way,
yeah.
if you had a certain income, if you had a certain lifestyle, if you were a certain type of person, the world fit you beautifully.
Yeah.
But if you didn't fit that mold, the world was a very difficult place to be in. Now, that could be because you're neurodivergent. That could be because you're of a different age or a different generation, or you have a different cultural background, or, the list just goes on. But now all that information, all that education is at your fingertips. So people can learn the way they learn best. They can build skills the way that suit them. They can interact with people in a way that is more comfortable and more encompassing for them. And so we get to create a more personalized world in the future, where everybody can be who they are and interact in the way that they do their best work. And I think that's pretty spectacular.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, actually, because again, I'm reflecting on my own experiences. I was always pigeonholed as the naughty kid or the disruptive kid, because I couldn't learn, I couldn't sit still long enough, and I couldn't learn in the expected way to do that, which is why I sort of ended up taking myself away from that, but learning quite practical stuff and like I'm really curious now because I want to understand things and pull them apart. And then the notion of we need this, or we're trying to get this skill, and you'll have to wait 4 years. I mean, that is just madness these days, isn't it? You just think, oh my God, I can't. You know, a lot of people say, well, I'll give you a real example. My son has just bought his first house, which is amazing, but because it was all new to him,
Yeah.
he went to see a house, he put an offer in, and then I think his perception was, I've bought it and I'm going to be able to move in next week. And I said, it doesn't work like that. He went, why? I said, I don't actually know. You've got to wait for solicitors and things to happen. He said, what things to happen? I said, that is a good question. I don't know, really. And I think he thought it was a bit like Amazon, that you just look at it, buy it, and then I'm in. Happy days. And it's so, you know, it's a bit of a shock to the system. But again, even that was like, this is painful. What, you know, why is it like this? And
all of that should change,
yeah,
right? That's the other thing, right? That's what we should be hoping for, is that, you know, we will start to see those areas of friction in the world, of friction in processes and things like that. And hopefully with technology, we will start to see that gap close. And what I'm hoping is that it will free up a lot more bandwidth mentally, emotionally, physically through time for us to be more self-sustaining in our learning. So again, it used to be you went to university for 3 or 4 years, or 6 years, or however long and then you were kind of done with learning. Like you were kind of done. And I think now we never get to be done. And I think that is so good for us. So good for us. And by the way, it doesn't need to take the 3, 4, or 5 months to buy a house here that it does. In America, we can buy a house in 3 weeks.
Wow. I'm
Just
not
for the
going to
record.
tell him that, because that's just going to drive him up the wall to go, why can't we model that? Why can't we do the same?
But why can't we? Right? But he should be asking that question. Yes. Don't you think, Caleb? Yes. Like that we need more people who are constantly challenging these prescribed and ingrained systems. And of course, the older a country is, the more of these systems and kind of levels exist. I would encourage him, say, why don't figure out what's happening? Ask the questions, you know, decide like, how do you expedite that? How do you make it faster?
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because that's a mindset change for everyone as well, to go, those people that are, so there's a camp that go, they're troublemakers, those people, they're asking all the awkward questions. And then there's a camp that goes, they're amazing, those people, they're asking all the curious questions, the obvious questions to make an impact. And like, all I keep thinking is there a benefit to everyone else in the world? And if the answer is yes, then that should be the right challenge, that we keep going. Why can't we shortcut this? Why can't we slipstream this? Why can't we improve it? Let's stop getting people really anxious about the length of that process, the length of that time, shortcut it, so then they can be really curious about other stuff that they can make an impact on. And that, I mean, that's a constant conversation that I keep having with people. To, you know, it's almost like the AI is the robots, that's the bad guys, and then there's humanity, and it simply isn't the case. It's how do we leverage things to make our life better, so we can free our own time up to make a lasting impact on things. To, because I keep saying our power as humans is to think illogically, to think irrationally, to challenge things, and that's always in constant friction with those thoughts that go, no, I want logical process, I want, you know, stability. Like, let's try and smash that apart a little bit and allow it.
Yeah, I agree. I just think we've got to just be open to change. Right? Change is one of the most spectacular, you know, things in the world. Variety is the spice of life, right? Trying something new, seeing something new, experiencing a new idea, testing out a new theory, exploring something. Like that is and should be the way that we spend the majority of our time.
Yeah, yeah. I was only this morning having a conversation about, I feel like I've been very different people over the years, or different mindsets over the years, and I think that's absolutely fine to embrace that. I'm at a point now where I feel like a lot of things, I'm on the edge of the cliff and I'm stepping off there. And I said the evolution of that, the evolution of Caleb almost is to hold other people's hands now and to go, it's fine, let's step off the cliff together. And that's how it almost needs to be. But what's because that's coming sort of not easily, but I'm embracing that. What sort of advice would you give to someone? Because there's always a group of people that say, I hate change, I never want to change, I'm comfortable what I'm doing, and I've always have done. It's always seen me through it.
You mean my husband? Yes. Bless him. It's great. I kind of have my own case study here at home, right?
Yeah.
I often joke, I'm wash and he's rinse and repeat. Like, and for over 20 years, that's the process, right? So, I think part of it is that change, like everything else, getting comfortable with it means experiencing it. And so, you have to build a palate for it. You have to build enough exposure to it and enough evidence that change isn't bad.
Yeah.
And so, we have to make sure that we are calling out change when it happens. We have to embrace incremental change, right? We have to acknowledge, like, let's just try it a little different this time. We don't have to go, from only ever eating at home to going to a 5-star restaurant. Yeah. We can find little stages of change. We can embrace change. We can talk about the benefits of change. Part of it is just everybody coming into it with a better attitude. That's a huge part of what I do. Like, I could absolutely talk about tech and how to use it all the time, but a huge part of what I do when I go and speak is actually get people just excited about it.
Yeah.
Because it isn't the process of using it that is the biggest hurdle, right? The biggest hurdle, isn't mastering riding a bicycle. The biggest hurdle is getting on it.
Yeah.
Right. And being open to trying it. And so if you can get somebody open to trying something, right? I have a great friend in the States who, taught me this phrase, which is, are you open to? And, I always think back on that of, instead of saying, do you want to do this? It isn't necessarily that they want to, but are they open to it? Could you just be open to that?
Yeah.
And I love that idea of how do you build a life that is open to possibilities? And if you can do that, everything is your oyster, right? The world is full of possibilities.
I was listening to Radio 1 the other day, and they had Ray on there, and who's quite, influential at the minute in the music scene. And I can't remember who was interviewing him. It was just a random question about, do you cook? And straight away, she'd obviously been reading Carol Dweck or something, because she said, I don't cook yet. I haven't mastered that yet. And I thought, wow, that's like, more people should embrace that, because rather than just say, oh no, I'm not very good at that, which is quite closed-minded, just simply opening yourself up to, and it was just instantaneous how she responded to it as well. No, I don't do that yet. And it was like, you could see those cogs almost, or in a voice, you could hear the cogs going to go, maybe I'll give that a go. And that's just a stop at the start of, I've got to get on, and then I'm thinking about your analogy of getting on a bike, the overwhelming feeling of when you've got that for the first time and go, yay, I can ride. Yeah. And I suppose it's that bit that you go, well, without trying it, you'll never get that emotional high as well.
Yep. I think that's completely true.
The only other thing that I'm thinking on that subject is how, with everything moving at a faster pace and leveraging the opportunity with AI and software to do stuff, where do we sit with owning something? When you say, well, something's not quite right, own that when it hasn't gone to plan and get it sorted. Is it too easy, you think, for people to go, it wasn't me, it was the tech, it was this, it was that?
Well, I think it's actually the line is going to get a lot more blurry. So, at the end of the day, people own technology.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we own the technology.
Yeah.
The technology does not own us.
Yeah.
And so, the ultimate responsibility lies with us. But I think I almost want to get to the point where there never has to be that level of blame. And instead, there's a level of ownership.
Yes.
Right. So blame comes when people, kind of avoid ownership.
Or they don't really want to get on the
Yeah, they,
change.
and instead of saying, instead of saying it was your fault, it's, well, let's get it fixed. Right. There's this kind of dichotomy between, let's focus on what went wrong as opposed to how do we repair it?
Yeah.
How do we repair it and prevent it going forward? And so I think everybody can do with, like I used to, it's a terrible phrase, right? And I'm sure that, please don't call Child Protective Services. But, I used to always say to my kids, like, I don't think that's going to kill you. I just don't, I don't think that's what's going to do you in. Like, and so, this idea that, whatever went wrong or whatever problem they were facing, it was like, look, I don't think that's going to be it. So, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
So going past the problem to the potential, I think that's the skill and the mindset, like of all things. Forget about technology, forget about, like instant gratification, all of that. It's all down to mindset, right? Like have a positive mindset, have a mindset of possibility, have a mindset of exploration, of opportunity, of service to others, of joy, and finding the joy in the world around us and finding the opportunity. Focus on that. Yes, there will be bumps along the way, but if you're looking at the horizon, those bumps aren't so bad as if you're just staring at the potholes in the road. So look up, look around, enjoy the ride, have a ton of fun along the way, and just explore the world. It's the most amazing place. And it'll never look the same tomorrow as it did today. So don't blink or you'll miss it.
And what, my other question to you was, what do you think your superpower is? But I'm really getting a feeling that your superpower is embrace the change in the future.
Yeah, I think, what is my superpower? I think, you know what? My superpower is probably perspective.
Okay.
I love to kind of step back and get perspective. Like, is this really a big deal? Probably not. Like in the big scheme of things, there's a great, Tom Hanks was being interviewed at one point, and he said he has this great phrase that he'd learned from somebody that is, this too shall pass. So, how did he describe it? He said, like, oh, having a really awful day, this too shall pass.
Yeah,
Having a really great day and everything happening, this too shall pass. Like, like it's, everything is a moment in time.
Yes.
And so have some perspective and look beyond the immediate pain or pleasure of something. And instead look at the bigger picture and ask yourself, is this how I want my world to be?
Yeah.
And make your world bigger. Don't settle. Like, absolutely just don't settle. Write your own story. Every day, write your own story, make intentional choices. I mean, how can you go wrong?
I mean, it's powerful if everyone is thinking that as well. And I think that what I'm seeing is there's a lot more people that are challenging what's going on, in the world, in the workplace, in life, and going, let's just make this a bit more intentional. Let's make our thoughts, let's put people, at the center of that. And there will always be a group of people that are, self-centered and think about themselves. But actually, I see more and more people thinking about other people as well, and the impact of a lasting legacy.
Well, and don't forget those people that we see sometimes, and we make the assumption that they are self-centered or they are unkind. We don't know their story.
No.
So I would say have an open heart.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's not a single person in this world that could sit there and say, I have never been a jerk to someone else that didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
Like we all, we could all look and, don't throw rocks at glass houses, right? You know what I mean? Like, so be kind, assume the best in people. And what does it cost you? Nothing. I really enjoyed it, Caleb. Thank you so much for for giving me an opportunity this morning to kind of talk about joy and things that I get excited about.
You said that with surprise. If people want to learn more about what you're doing or get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can absolutely go to my website. So julieholmes.com. That's pretty easy. They can find me on LinkedIn. Those are probably the two places. They can just go and see me speak somewhere.
Hey,
I always love that.
Thank you so much. This has been Mind Boost Moments. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to hear more, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. And if you want to learn how Mind Boost can really add feeling and emotion to learning experiences within your business, check out our website at mindboostlearning.com.